gardener's world. These pak choi, although they're still growing, have started to go to seed, so they're past their best, and the last couple of days they have been ravaged by either pigeons or pheasants. I haven't caught either in the act, but both have that distinctive pattern of tearing at the leaves, and they certainly have been torn at. So, their days are done, and I need to clear the bed and prepare it for spring vegetables when the ground warms up in a few weeks' time. Talking about spring, of course, we had the spring equinox a few days ago. So although the weather here at Longmeadow is a little grey and chilly today, the days are getting longer. On tonight's programme, we visit the Isle of Wight to meet a gardener with a consuming passion for daylilies.
There's a daylily for everybody, and they come from 2 inches tiny little plants to 5 foot tall.
And Francis goes to the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh to explore their magnificent collection of gingers.
Look at this is amazing.
This is beautiful, isn't it?
And I shall be getting my dahlias and cannas out of their winter protection to spark them onto their journey into summer. On top of that, I shall be sowing some exotic annuals to give me some late season fun. Come on then, let's go. Let's get at this. Come on, go. As the snowdrops fade for about a month afterwards is the perfect moment to lift and divide them. Snowdrops spread by seed quite successfully, but relatively slowly. And of course you can plant them as bulbs, but by far the best way to increase your stock of snowdrops is to take a clump, lift it, divide it, and replant it in 2 or 3 different sections. And you can see that if I take that and just gently with my hand break that, and that gives me 2 substantial clumps that quite quickly, within about a year or 2, will double in size. You take half your snowdrops and divide them into 2, you've automatically doubled your stock, and then that's going to double in a couple of years. And if you do it every year, it's surprising how quickly you can go from, say, a dozen plants to a beautiful white snowy drift of flowers. And there's a snowdrop bulb, nice big bulb, nice and healthy, root system beneath it, and whatever you do, don't cut the foliage off. These snowdrops on this side have only been here about 4 years, and they were planted singly all the way along, so you can see that they have spread pretty well already. And snowdrops are unusual among spring bulbs in that they really enjoy woodland conditions that is slightly damp, but there are always trees present. You never see snowdrops in a big open field. They need a bit of shade and some moisture. So I'll put that in there. I really want to bulk up on this side. These ones are only 2 years old, and we cut this hedge back in the winter to reveal them. But what it's revealed is it's a bit patchy. So if I can plant a few in here, we can start to bulk it out. And also, I don't want them to look like rows of park bedding. It should look as natural as possible. Now, Longmeadow is fairly damp at the moment, but you mustn't let them dry out. And although the chances of fine, dry weather in March and April are pretty slim, if it is very dry, it's a good idea to keep them watered. So what I like to do is water them in and then maybe water them again before the leaves die back. Once the leaves have died back, you'll forget all about them. They'll look after themselves. I do love snowdrops, I guess everybody does, but for me it's the massed effect that looks so good. There's no question, there are some people who channel the horticultural energy into the love of just one plant. And last summer we went to the Isle of Wight to meet a man and share his enthusiasm for his special plant.
I'm Nick Pearce. My passion is Hemerocallis or daylilies. Daylily literally because every flower just lasts one day. There's a daylily for everybody, and they come from 2 inches tiny little plants to things about 5 foot tall. It's a hobby that's gone a bit mad. It started when I came to the Isle of Wight and I was looking for a nice place to live, and I found this beautiful little cottage. And the fantastic thing about it was it has this marvellous great long garden. I put up a greenhouse and I thought, well, why don't I start hybridising my own? I really had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what was good, and I was just pollinating everything without any kind of clear direction or focus. I mean, now looking back, I realise how awful they were, but that's the thing about growing anything from seed or... I mean, it may take you like 10 years before you register your first variety, but every year thereafter, you've got a new set of seedlings coming along. So these are my daylily seed beds, basically. These are all my seedlings that I'm trialling. I'm going to see how big it's going to grow, how big the flower is, how tall the scape is, how multi-branched it is, what the foliage is like, whether it's clean, whether it grows well, whether it clumps, or whether it just stays and grows very slowly. So it's basically trying to see whether it's garden worthy, as well as being a beautiful flower. This is Dr. Strangelove. Beautiful quality in the sense that it has these purple streaks. I'm using that as a parent plant, so as the father in this case, because I'm taking the pollen and I'm putting it on this unregistered variety, this seedling, which I think is good as a parent, and I'm hoping to get something between the two. What I'd like is this kind of size, that kind of shape, but with some white markings through the flower. So it's just a matter of taking the stamen and putting the pollen from the anther onto the female part of the other flower, which is the pistil. The flower will die tomorrow, but hopefully it will start to swell at the base and we'll have some seed for next year. We're on the eastern tip of the Isle of Wight and we don't get a lot of water. And I, like so many people, have been inspired by Beth Chatto's gravel garden, and she doesn't water at all. And I thought I'll go exactly the same way with this. This is a dry area, I can't water it. So I fill the garden with grasses and with my daylilies. The one thing they will do is tolerate drought better than any other perennial that I know. And here they are, flowering beautifully. I put loads of well-rotted manure and everything in it to try and improve the soil. But other than that, they get a good bit of muck when they go in, and then they're just left alone. And they are that tough, that good a plant. If you've got a dry, awkward position, and most perennials won't survive, then stick a lily in to just see how beautiful it looks. This is summer longlegs, probably given the name longlegs because it's a lovely tall variety. It's basically what they call a self because it's the same colour all over. Very free flowering, very nice plant. This is wild wookie, and just another good plant that's just going to flower really well. This is screaming demon, and I've used this quite a lot actually in a hybridisation program purely because of the way its flowers. It has this unusual form, and the way it displays and twists and curls. Beautiful plant. There's a peak season for daylilies, which is the end of June. Actually, they flower from May to September. Each flower only lasts a day, but you'll have another 100 buds on there, so you'll have it blooming usually for about 4 to 6 weeks during the year. They can look a bit messy afterwards. It's very easy just to hack them back, just to give them a chop. And don't be afraid to, be brutal with them. One thing I've not mentioned is how bomb-proof they are. I can't put them in the compost because they'll just keep growing. They're that easy. Once you've got them, all you need to do is leave them alone. But after a few years, they'll do so well that you're going to need to divide them. And you'll have loads of plants to give to your friends, neighbours, whoever you want to. And then just put a bit of the plant back in and it'll start all over again for you. It's an easy, beautiful plant. Everyone should have a daylily in the garden. There's a variety for everyone. There's a colour for everyone. It's just down to personal choice. What do you like? I'm pretty sure we can find one for you.
I certainly agree that there isn't a garden that can't have a Hemerocalis, or 2 or 3. Although they don't grow as well here as I'd like them to. I think we're generally too wet. But one thing that Nick didn't say about them is that they are very good to eat. Add hemerocallis flowers to a salad, and not only will it make it look good, but they'll taste better too. They're lovely. I'm cutting back last year's growth on the penstemons here. I kept them on, despite the fact that they look untidy, because they do form a protective layer. And that means that the new shoots, which are hardy but only down to about -5, have survived much colder weather than that. And although they have been bashed and untidy, they've done a good job. However, now is the time to get rid of those, and so we can have this year's plant unfettered. And of course it won't flower till mid to late summer. Whereas in front, that Daphne, very delicately flowering. Daphnes have never done very well for me. So actually it's double the pleasure to see them when they do perform. And I've got 2 or 3, small, they're almost fragile, but they're very beautiful. Come on, Nige, come on. Good boy. At this time of year, there's real competition for space in the greenhouse because all winter, this is just packed with plants that need protection from the cold. It's not a warm greenhouse. We keep it at just above 5 degrees, but that's frost protected. The cannas, for example, under here are very happy here all winter. Cool, kept reasonably moist, water them once a week, and just gently growing. And you can see that they're packed in old potting compost, so there's no nutrition. What I'm trying to do is to just keep them ticking over. If they get too big too soon, I've got great big plants that I've got nowhere to put. So that's a little bit of a balancing act. Whereas on this side, this, which looks like nothing, I've just bunged it into an old pot, is Euconis bicolor. Now, Euconis likes to be bone dry all winter, but frost-free, and then you add water and a bit of warmth in summer, and it's got that fantastic pineapple flower. But that's 2 ways of protecting tender plants. But I've got another group which have a very different regime. This is where I keep all the dahlias over winter. Now it's time to get them out and check them. These were put away about November this year. The idea is to lift them just after the first frost. When the leaves blacken, then you can lift them up, and that means the tubers won't be touched. I've stored them in plastic, and remember, we're trying to cut down on plastic. But the first and the best thing you can do with your plastic is to use it, because it's the throwing away of it that is the problem. So they've been stored in plastic and old potting compost. And you can see there's a little bit of growth there in the dark. Now, if I lift this up, this is a variety called Chimborazo, which is a lovely red and yellow one for the jewel garden. Get rid of all the loose compost so you can inspect it. The idea is just to go over each dahlia and make sure it's in good nick. We use old potting compost, but you could use vermiculite if you've got it, sand, any material that will remain moist without being sopping wet. Because what we want are nice plump tubers. 2 things I'm looking for is, are they shriveled up, in which case they're too dry, or are they rotten, in which case they're probably too wet, although it could be eaten. We've got a little bit of problem. That's actually slug damage, but that is a nice firm tuber, so I'm not going to take that off. There we have a rotten one. A little bit of mould on there, but that's no problem. We've got another shriveled up tuber there, so that can come out. Slightly damaged one, but that's okay. That's a good one. Now, there are 2 things I can do with this at this stage. I can pot them up in fresh compost, water them, put them somewhere warm, and that will trigger them into growth. Or I can force them with heat above a radiator, or if you've got a heated mat, put them on there, water them, you'll get vigorous new growth, and that makes great material for cuttings. And actually, that's what I'm going to do with this. So I've got fresh compost here. This is a coir-based compost. So what we want to do is build new tubers and grow the ones we have, so that, and the new cut material is going to come from the top there. And now that will go on a heated mat in the greenhouse, and I reckon we'll be taking cuttings from that in about 4 weeks' time. And of course, the reason why we go to such trouble with these tender plants, be they dahlias or cannas or whatever it might be, is because they do add another glorious dimension to the garden in summer. And if you've got a conservatory or a really big greenhouse, then you can take it even further and have a wider range of plants all the year round. And last summer, Francis went to Edinburgh to visit the Royal Botanic Garden to celebrate their amazing collection of indoor tender plants.
When I was about 20, I began to fall in love with plants and gardening, so I got myself a job as an apprentice gardener in Kent. And after a few years there, I decided I wanted to learn even more, so I came here to study. This is the Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh. Back in 2010, I came here to learn horticulture and botany. I spent many happy hours here studying some amazing plants. In the glasshouses, woodlands, rock garden, and in the beautiful herbaceous borders that stretch for over 160 metres. Along with incredible plants, there are some hugely dedicated people who work here. Today, I'm meeting up with Mark Newman, who has spent his whole working life travelling the world studying just one plant family, the gingers. So Mark, why gingers?
Well, I was looking for a project when I was starting my PhD in Aberdeen, and the lady who was researching the gingers at the time wanted someone to work on chromosomes, so that's what I ended up doing.
And you've been doing gingers ever since?
Pretty much ever since. I had one or two other jobs, but most of my life has been on these plants, and there's still an awful lot to do.
And this is a group that you're working on at the moment, is that right?
That's right. These plants belong in a genus called Globber. These plants have an inflorescence. So each one of these is a branch of an inflorescence that has maybe 3 or 4 flowers in it. So there'll be flowers opening day by day over a period of weeks.
Gingers are a huge family. They come from far and exotic places. Look at this is amazing.
This is beautiful, isn't it? This is Hedychium gardnerianum, which I collected when I was in southwest China in 1996.
Wow.
And it grew there at the edge of a field at about 800 metres altitude, so it's fairly cool, but it wouldn't take any frost, I think, or perhaps very light frost.
Okay.
I love it for the stature and the waxy coating on the stems and the bold leaves that stand so well, but the colour combination...
Is that coming from this?
It is,
it's
yes.
Amazing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And could you grow this in the UK?
You could.
Really?
It needs cool glass and quite a lot of fertilisation, a lot of water when it's growing. These stems grow and flower once, so after they've flowered, then you just cut them down completely,
right
and
to
it'll
the
grow.
base.
Yes, right to the base.
Okay.
With those conditions, with a decent summer, it'll flower late in the year like this.
Okay. Beautiful. Worth the effort, isn't it?
It is, certainly, yes.
But there are some gingers you may be more familiar with. Oh, now this is more recognisable, isn't it?
That's right. This is common ginger. It's this particular plant, I think, is grown from material bought in a supermarket.
Really?
It's very easy to grow. You can, if you see these healthy-looking buds on a piece in the supermarket, you just plant it in a free-draining soil with quite a lot of fertiliser, and keep it well watered when it's in growth in the summer, and keep it warm. It won't take any frost at all, so you have to grow it indoors. We think it's from somewhere in tropical Asia, but it's been in cultivation for so long that we haven't really pinpointed the origin of it. But it's well worth growing. It's got a lovely scent when it's fresh compared to the powdered ginger.
It smells amazing, doesn't it?
Lovely.
And great to cook with as well,
Yes.
of course.
This one is cardamom, and this one is grown for its fruits rather than its rhizomes.
Yes.
This plant is still quite small. It'll grow 3 or 4 times bigger than that before
Really?
it flowers. And then this one here is a young plant of turmeric.
Oh, that's a really delicate plant, isn't it?
Isn't it? I like the shape of the leaves and the fact that they're folded like that.
Yeah.
And then underneath the soil will be rhizomes that look rather similar to the ginger ones, but they're bright yellow when you cut them and have that characteristic earthy smell.
Amazing. All these different plants in the same family.
It is interesting.
So lovely looking and so useful as well.
Yeah.
So there you go. Next time you're in a supermarket, look out for fresh ginger and maybe try growing it on your windowsill.
I do love the Botanic Gardens at Edinburgh, one of my favourite gardens in the British Isles. Also love ginger, and I have tried growing it, but I found it quite a lot of fuss because it does need a lot of heat. But there are exotic plants that are very easy to grow from seed, And you don't have to look after them over winter because they're essentially annuals and you can discard them. And there's a plant that I never would be without, certainly in the Jewel Garden, and that is Tithonia. Now, Tithonia is a Mexican sunflower. It's got fantastic, intense orange flowers and works brilliantly on two levels. The first of all, as orange. Orange is a really powerful colour in the garden, but also it's the colour opposite of blue, stronger as a result. Now, I'm going to sow them in these little plugs. These are made out of coir. You can see I've got two different types. That sort of looks like a tea bag wrapped around it. That actually does have netting around it, but you can't see it. And you simply place them in a seed tray, put them in a basin of water or a sink, leave them for no more than 5-10 minutes, and what you have are plugs, and they're just held in the bag. The seed then grows, the roots form, and when they reach the edge of the bag, they air prune, and that means they're nice and tight and condensed, and you just plant the whole thing. If you need to pot it on, you will need a container of some sort, and you can either recycle a plastic pot or use another pot that isn't made out of plastic and just pot it on into that. But we'll worry about that nearer the time. This is Tithonia rotundifolia torch. The seeds will need some heat to germinate. So if you haven't got a heated mat, then certainly above a radiator. They're quite big seeds, which is good because it means that we can really try and just sow one for each of these plugs. Now with my fingers that's tricky, so a little thing that I often do is I have a container of water and dip a pencil or something in the water, and that just helps you pick up the seed. You see the seed there sticks to the water, and then I can just place it down and take it off. Of course, if you have deft and nimble fingers, you won't need to resort to pencils and water. Now when I've sown them and I've placed them on top, I'll turn the pencil round and just push them gently in so they don't fall off. Well, that's one tray of Tithonia. I'll probably sow at least another, if not a couple more trays, because I do like to have a lot in the garden. They're a fabulous plant. Now, I'm also going to grow a climber called Cobea scandens. It's actually a perennial, but I treat it as an annual here. It's got marvellous sort of bell-shaped flowers. They're fragrant. And what's great about them is that they start to flower in mid to late summer and go right on profusely until the weather gets too cold. Now, a lot of people will tell you to soak these before sowing them. That certainly will do no harm. I have never soaked them, and they've always germinated quite well for me. But what is a good idea is to put them in sideways. By putting them on edge, you're fixing them into the coir. There's no need to cover it up, because actually light will help germination. And again, this needs heat and light, so put it in a bright place in order to germinate. When it comes to labelling, I'm trying out non-plastic labels. These I've just found, they're like lolly sticks. A bit small, but wooden labels are perfectly good. The combination quickly, but it will take their time to develop. So particularly with the Tithonia, this is something I would get on with so it can get a nice strong plant by midsummer. Perhaps, who knows, this could be a job for the weekend. And here are some others. If you've got an apple or a pear tree, it's important to get on and do any pruning that you want to do now. But remember, pruning in winter stimulates vigorous regrowth, and this new growth will not bear any fruit for at least 2 and up to 4 more years, so plan ahead. And the general idea is to create a permanent open framework through which a pigeon can easily fly. After a hard winter, ferns are looking very bedraggled, and now is the time to cut off all top growth to reveal the knuckle of bud that will burst forth with new fronds very soon. One of the best spring jobs is to mulch your borders. Put a layer of organic material, and I'm using homemade compost, over all bare soil. The main tip is to keep it good and thick. Far better to do a small area properly than a thin layer over the whole garden. In the last few days, the frogs here at Longmeadow have really got busy. There are so many, and there's frog spawn there, and that is increasing by the day. And what frogs like for their frog spawn is still shallow water. Now, it could be a puddle, it could be just a little area, but if you've got a pond, resist any temptation to clean it out, tidy it up, or add any plants. Let the frogs do their thing. And their cycle is they come to the water now, they lay the frog spawn, that then hatches out, and the young frogs will leave in summer. The adult frogs will leave the water by and large and spend most of their time on land, in your garden, eating slugs, so you want to treasure them, apart from the fact that they are completely fascinating. Well, that's it for today. Don't forget that this weekend the clocks go forward, the best day in the gardening calendar. And I'll see you back here at Longmeadow at the same time next week. So until then, bye-bye.